It's that time of the week, opening up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. Questions on Justin Herbert. Is he a choke artist for the Chargers? And officiating, fines, flags. We got to figure some of this out in the NFL going forward. Scoring defenses or defensive scoring is up. Offensive scoring is down. Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Okay, this is for those folks that like offensive football and offensive players, Matt. I think we're going to talk a lot about the defensive side of the ball today and why the defenses are ahead of the offenses. And we saw a lot of defense played on Monday Night Football when the Cowboys beat the Los Angeles Chargers. And we are getting questions about the Chargers quarterback, Justin Herbert. And it's kind of like deja vu all over again for the Chargers year after year. They're good, not great, not breaking through the threshold that they need to. And a lot of the blame, as with any time any team does anything, the credit and the blame goes to head coach, goes to quarterback, and we're seeing that right now with the Los Angeles Chargers. And it seems to be more on Herbert this week than head coach Staley because of probably the late interception. And so, what do you think? Is Justin Herbert a choker? I want to go to our question asker here in the mailbag, by the way, at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL, or drop your questions in the YouTube comments. And the question here is from Steelers Burner. Can we start to ask the question, is Herbert a choker? Staley's D held Dallas to 20, more weapons, new coordinator. No one mentions how his last touchdown versus Minnesota was straight off the hands of a DB. Room for excuses is shrinking.
I hear you. I mean, I do. I'm very, very much a Herbert believer, supporter without question. However, I mean, Tua went ahead of him. He wasn't the second pick in the draft, mainly because the way Oregon used him was strange, but also there were personality questions. Not that he's not a good person. I mean, everybody seems to love him. We're now seeing him on Subway commercials and things like that. But he's an admitted boring introvert, not outgoing, kind of beats to his own drummer, not a rah-rah, grab you by the face mask, Dan Marino type leader. So I could see people saying, is he tough enough to, pull it out in the end and, get me that big win when I need it most? Well, toughness doesn't worry me in the slightest, at least physical toughness. He's playing with a broken finger as we speak. Last year he played with a punctured lung, or was that 2 years ago? Or no, they punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung. I'm sorry.
That was his like year to get him to play in the first place.
That's what got him in. Yeah.
But it was the rib last year. Yeah.
Yes. I knew it was something in the torso. I couldn't remember, but he had like 2 or 3 major injuries he played through. But I guess if there's any question about him, they're certainly not physical or ability to throw the football. Can you come through when it matters most? But you mentioned, this has been going on with this organization for a while. I've been following football since I was born in 1973, and I've been following football since I was like 6 or 7. And Dan Fouts was my all-time favorite, non-favorite Steeler. And Fouts, River, Herbert, even Breeze, like this organization doesn't support their quarterbacks particularly well in the last 4 decades.
It's amazing because there's so many franchises in the NFL. Like the Chicago Bears would have killed to have any one of those guys as their quarterback. And the Chargers keep finding quarterbacks, but then can't supplement that into titles. Yeah.
So along those lines, Mike Sando did a study a couple weeks ago, I think it was in the offseason, of all like the great quarterbacks in recent memory. By EPA, who has gotten the most and least help from defense and special teams? Well, Brady got the most. Rivers got the least. You know what I mean? Like, and it sure feels like Herbert's going down that Rivers path a little bit too.
And of course, Dave, our resident Miami Dolphins fan, checking in. He says, "Are you willing to settle our bet yet? At least then I'll stop bothering you each week that Tua is better than Justin Herbert." What do you think? You ready for that one?
No, keep bothering us.
Yeah, no concessions yet on that one. Tua doing a great job dropping some dimes down there in Miami, though. I like it. It's certainly closer than it looked in previous seasons. Drop Justin Herbert in Miami, though. I would love to see that. That would be fun.
So Tua is having the better year. Yes.
Yeah.
However, if you ask both GMs, do you want to swap quarterbacks? Miami would say yes, and the Chargers would say no.
Yeah. Or if you had a league-wide draft, Herbert would still go ahead of Tua.
Herbert would be like the third or fourth pick overall.
But it's closing the gap. Let's keep seeing it. You know, at some point we might say, you know what, he doesn't have it. He's not a killer, right? And that's part of being a great NFL quarterback. Like if you're whatever a nerd, I mean, look at the Mannings. They're the biggest
right
around, right? It's like rah whatever guys. Being prepared, being a stone cold killer, you know, on the field is what all great quarterbacks have. Does he not have that? Is he not a grinder maybe in a way that top quarterbacks are? Maybe, but that kind of is remained to be seen for me. But from a just an ability standpoint, from really everything you need in a quarterback, it's the hardest part. How do you know what
sure.
What that makeup is? And you could be smart and physically tough and still not be a killer out on the field. And you know, that ultra competitiveness. So it's something to put a pin in and think about. And I understand the question. Is he a choker? I don't think
strong word.
Yeah. I think it's the wrong way to put it anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess it's my biggest concern. Is he a killer? I guess yes, that's my only concern.
Right. Yeah. And my question is he is he a choke artist? Is he a killer? That would be does he have that?
Real quick, I'm veer this to a slightly different path real quick. So Steelers playing the Rams this week. So I've been asked a million times already, you know, what do you think of Stafford? Where's he at in the pecking order? So it didn't really dawn on me until being asked that on Monday. I think Stafford's the best quarterback right now in the NFC. But that's not really where I'm going with this. But I want people to think about that. And I'm sure people are like Hurts, Stack. I mean, those guys aren't having good years. Anyway, we had this conversation before in the AFC, the young, incredible crop of young quarterbacks. I love asking people, do you think Josh Allen will ever win a Super Bowl? Oh, yeah, sure. You think Tua is ever going to win a Super Bowl? Oh, yeah, sure. Think Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert? The answer is going to be no to most of them.
Right. Like how can
Mahomes still exists?
How can all those quarterbacks win Super Bowls when it's going to be, you know, when Mahomes and Brock Purdy are going to win them all? You know what I mean?
Well, sure.
Oh, by the way, Jared Goff might be having the best year in the NFC. I would argue.
Best year and best player isn't always necessarily the same thing to me, but you're right. I mean, Purdy and Goff might be having the best years.
Yeah, and Stafford. I think the thing with Stafford is he's just still Stafford.
Exactly.
For the most part.
Yeah. Where I thought he was a top 10 guy coming in. If anything, he went up the ranks, and Hurts and Dak went down the ranks.
Real quick, one more on the Chargers here. We got a question about Joey Bosa. Emilio asks, is Joey Bosa done? He is injured, but even when he's not, and he's been on the field, he hasn't done much this year.
I don't have much to add to that, but I did want to bring this tweet up because I think he's kind of gotten a pass in the last couple years, and he's making a lot of money now too. I mean, they extended him.
I was going to go to the contract.
Yeah.
He won't finish that contract if things keep going this direction.
He needs to turn this season around now because he's not a force out there, and he isn't out there much. I mean, side note, his brother hasn't impressed me this year as much either, by the way.
Box score, no, but he's putting in work.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
The sack numbers aren't huge for Nick Bosa right now. His PFF grade is at the top of the league. He's putting in work. He gets a lot of double teams. I think Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa get the most double teams in the entire league right now. They both played each other last week, is why I saw that stat. And no, he's putting in work, just not a big sack total right now.
Okay.
And that's kind of that's Joey Bosa. Like Joey Bosa's not a 20 sack a year guy, but he's stout. He set the some players you do have to watch them every snap to really appreciate what they're doing.
And I do think Joey, what I've seen, and I watched that, every snap of last game, hasn't been the impact player that he used to be or is billed to be. Joey.
Well, that's what happens. So you get injuries, so you're not on the field, you're not producing, and then the injuries sap some of that juice that you have. So when you are on the field, you're not quite the dynamic player you once were. I think that's what we're seeing with Joey Bosa.
Yeah,
so
I think so too.
Not great type of player is maybe where he's just going to be because of the injuries.
And I'm not ready to say he's done, put a fork in him, but
right.
I mean, he might turn this thing around.
Right, but he might have to get cut and end up on another roster and have a part 2 of his career too.
Now I was talking about their salary cap's a nightmare next year. So maybe he's one of the ones that the axe falls on.
Scoring is down to the NFL, especially in week 6. A lot of top defenses who are our favorite defenses. Why is scoring down? And we're going to talk about officiating, flags, fines next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're scouting the waiver wire or you're prepping for those daily fantasy drafts, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed fits on your rosters. Let's see who Vinny has picked out for eBay's guaranteed fit fantasy picks of the week. And how about for your DFS rosters, Drake London, starting to show why the Falcons drafted him first among the many talented wide receivers in the 2022 class. London just found a groove a little bit in that offense with Desmond Ridder. The past 2 weeks, he's caught 15 of his 21 targets for 203 yards. It draws another good spot in week 7 against the Buccaneers, who struggled to contain the number 1 wide receivers they've gone up against this season, and could keep bringing that production. You got Titans, Vikings, Cardinals coming up before week 11. So week 11 bye there for Drake London in the Falcons. So maybe a trade target as well in your fantasy leagues. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly at all times with eBay Motors. We're talking brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs. My baby needed a fender flare. I ran over a cone on the freeway, knocked that fender flare off. I was able to find the exact part I needed, had a green check, so I knew it was going to fit. Got it home, slapped it on. Could not have been easier thanks to eBay Motor and eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit. So it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time. Just find that green check every time or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Okay, Matt, we are going to go to the officiating part of this podcast. And Jared says, appreciate the comment on fines versus flags and officiating crew consistency. Can we agree that fines should be a percentage of salary instead of a flat fee? $10,000 is a whole lot different for someone making the league minimum versus an elite veteran, and easy for vets to ignore. And so we kind of had the idea, and we had multiple questions about officiating, how to fix it. We had an idea about, maybe some of these flags need to stay in the refs' pockets, and then they review them later, and fines are sent out instead for some of these things. It helps game flow, and it helps bad calls that could be game changing, because the worst calls, Matt, to me, are the ones that are the biggest calls, the 15-yarders, the pass interferences that just shouldn't be called. And those are huge game changing calls.
Yeah, I feel like we talk about this every year because it gets a little annoying. Your Niner Brown game was a great example. The Monday Nighter this week was a great example of just too many flags. I mean, I'm not sure how to solve that. We got two similar questions about scoring being down, basically asking in a roundabout way, should they be more lenient on holds and illegal men downfield? I think that might kill two birds. I think in general, there are a couple referee crews that think they're a little more important than they are. The people are coming to see them, exactly. And maybe they should get a little talking to. I don't know which ones they are, but you can figure it out.
Black and white striped jerseys in the crowd in most stadiums.
Exactly. So I do think they tend to. A couple of crews, I mean, and all this information's out there. I want to start studying it more, to be honest with you, are notorious. And you should just look at it that way for bets, who you're picking, things like that, because it's influencing games an awful lot right now.
I want to go a little bit deeper on that. It was M. Napier who says, What about getting rid of ineligible man downfield as a penalty? Would help the offense with RPOs and get rid of a few stoppages. Joey Bag of Donuts says, with scoring being so low this year and offenses being so bad, is it a matter of time before they legalize offensive holding? So what would those suggestions even look like, especially the ineligible man downfield penalty kind of going away?
See, I think that's just chaos. You're just going to have everybody like running routes and, you know, I mean, like you can't just have 10 guys trucking downfield.
It'd be like a moving screen down the field, and it would
It could be madness.
And they already have a little leeway. You'll see it all the time, and you'll get screenshots every week. Oh, this play should have been called back. Look at this guy was 1 yard past the 5 yard limit down the field, right? And it's like, they're going to let him play a little bit already on that.
Which I'm cool with. I mean, they've loosened up on that. That was 2 years ago. They were really tight on. It's like, oh my gosh, every screen was an illegal man downfield, every RPO, and all the linemen are like, how do you want me to know? I can't see anything, you know? So I think loosening that up, and they have done some of it, is great. And I think we did see the league without holding. The COVID year, they didn't call holding at all. You know, I mean, there was no one in the stands. I think they were worried about losing some viewership. They wanted scoring to be up, and it set records for scoring. Scoring's been down every year since. And I watched time and time again where they just, you know, didn't throw the flags for holding. Fine. You know, I mean, it worked, but I don't love it.
And holding is for sure legal. It just depends where your hands are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it if we're talking offensive line versus defensive line, you can hold them all day long if your hands are inside. Your hands are outside. They're trying to spin out, turn the corner. You see the jersey tug on the outside, then it's not legal. So like every offensive lineman, they're just taught to grab that thing inside, right? And if you got them controlled, you can do anything you want with them from the inside. It's kind of weird how it's like, okay, it's holding's actually legal, but then at this point it's not. It gets hard to officiate, and that's sort of what I always come back to with any of the officiating. They should be trying their best to find ways that different game-changing calls, especially mistaken ones, aren't happening, and that just means less total flags. I don't think it means let things go. I just think they could do it better with the technology that we have. So more people in a booth instead of on the field making some of these calls. You know how they have spotters that take players out of games because they think they might be concussed and have to go through concussion protocol. They should do that for the illegal, the helmet to helmet hits. You know, it's like, unless it's so obvious, you don't throw that flag, and they can stop the game at any moment from the booth, and they can get 3 replays before you even get out of the next huddle, right? And stop the game, and they can stop it from upstairs. And I think there'd be fewer stoppages that way, and not more actually. And penalties could, especially those types of penalties that are happening so fast that it's impossible for these refs to officiate really well on the field.
I agree with everything you said. And the other things I wanted to mention were, it's easy to kill the refs. I mean, they're always going to be targets. No one's going to be like, boy, that was a great game officiating there, sir. You know, I mean, no, that never happens. But I will say they're really, really good on, was that a touchdown or not? Was his feet in bounds? Was that a catch? Is it spotting the ball? Like, they've gotten to be almost perfect on those type of things, where it wasn't really long ago where they screwed it up. Yeah.
And again, it's like it's inches too. So they might be a little bit wrong spotting and they're close. But if tennis can have this computer generated image of exactly where the ball hit the line, how can they not have that with first downs and stuff in the NFL yet?
Yeah.
Footballs and technology. So technology's got to play a part in it at some point. And we're going to start seeing it in baseball as well, because sometimes it's just egregious. Like, you can't, because it changes the rules of the game. Like, there's a strike zone, and if you start calling it when it's not a strike zone, then what are you doing? You're not playing baseball anymore.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we all grew up. This umpire calls a lot of balls. This guy with a lot of strikes.
Yeah, this guy,
it is pretty.
Extend it to the outside. You know, you can throw it a little bit outside, and he'll call that outside strike. Yeah. And this guy likes to call them high. So yeah, and I like that part of the game too. You don't necessarily want to take that out completely because there's gamesmanship involved, and I think there is with certain refs too. But just the big ones where you complete a pass downfield and they throw a flag, and it's like, it wasn't. Like, you're taking away the most exciting play that happened in an entire game. You can't do that to the fans and the sport. It makes it a worse sport.
Real quick on the fines, we kind of ignored that part of the question.
Yes,
like I understand what this tweeter Xer is asking. You know, like, if we do the same thing, it hurts my wallet a lot more if I just got called up off the practice squad and maybe they have 4 game checks all year and one of them evaporates.
Yeah, you didn't get paid. You played for free.
You played for free, yeah. And you may have 5 games in your career and one of them was on the house. However, there's another side to this too. And I know no one's crying for the rich guys, but I'm trying to think, is Nick Bosa the highest paid defensive player? If not, he's right there, whatever. I mean, he's, right at the top. That doesn't mean his fine for the same thing should be $1.6 million.
No.
You know what I mean?
It definitely should.
I mean, like, it's the same percentage of your salary, but that doesn't mean I should write you a check for $2 million on Tuesday just because I hit the quarterback in the head.
And maybe it should come out of a different. It shouldn't come from like a player pool or anything either. It should come from the team, because the onus should be on the team to coach the player to not do that thing that you're getting fined for. So it should hurt in some way, specifically. But yeah, the guy who you can't have a guy not get a game check in a given week. That seems like it shouldn't even be illegal, period. Like I feel like there's like lawyers that should be involved at that point.
But it actually happens. I mean, if the cheapest guy in the field does the worst thing you can, and he probably doesn't get paid that day. But again, that doesn't mean Bosa should pay the same percentage.
Right.
And give the league $1 million or,
I don't know. There may be no answer here, but maybe.
And by the way, folks, the Bosas of the world might hand that dude, here's $500. Here's a great.
Right. Yeah.
There's some of that happens.
There's a lot of that.
Thanks for getting my back.
I've heard some really good stories about how, not to get completely off topic because we got to move on, but I've heard some great stories about how, some guys, fighting for the last spot in camp and OTAs, and the guys go out to a strip club, and, the veteran just hands the youngster a wad, thousands of dollars, and say, here, have fun, because I know you're not making money. I am. Let's have a good night. So here you go. Spend this money.
And that's a huge hockey thing too. I mean, like, you pay the guys that are protecting the stars, especially back in the day, the goons fight. I mean, they don't get much, but they're protecting the assets. They're protecting the LeBrons and Gretzky's of the world. You think those guys take care of them? Of course they do.
Absolutely. All right. Why is scoring down in the NFL, and what are our top defenses right now going into week 7 next? Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? You can't turn yourself off at night. You can't turn off that brain, racing thoughts, keeping you awake and ruining not only that night, but the next day too. Sometimes your brain is getting in your own way, like how you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't seem to do it and get it done on the day-to-day and on the week-to-week. Therapy helps you figure those things out, what's holding you back, so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. And sometimes it's just that weekly check-in to make sure you're hitting the checkpoints in your life can help turn off those thoughts and help you get things in line to achieve what you're trying to achieve in your specific journey, in your life, in your personal life, in your professional life. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. And all you do is you fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. And sometimes you don't jive with a therapist. That's okay. Switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Why I feel like the defenses are striking back. So a few weeks ago, teams were putting up 70 because it's not even a year-to-year thing. And I know scoring has kind of been down recently there's an uptick in passing, uptick in scoring in the NFL, and then slightly come down the last couple of seasons in total. But even this year, it seemed like the start of the year, which happens a lot, kind of the offenses are not quite ready to go, and some funky games and some extended preseason football games at the start of the year, Matt, and some scoring down. Then all of a sudden, those offenses get rolling, and you got teams putting up 70. You got teams putting up 40 every week. And this last week, especially in week 6, all of a sudden it seemed like, man, the best defenses were the teams that were winning the football games in week 6. And so the defense is kind of striking back in a long-term slow arc, but also in a mid-season arc right now from week 6 now going into week 7.
Yes, and I have a hunch that when the season's over, there's a Super Bowl champ, and we do all these analytical studies of the year, we might look back and be like, week 6 was kind of weird. Just happened to be a weird week. There was some weather. Just a weird week. That's certainly possible. Now, I could go on for an hour about why scoring's down, and I'll be as quick as I can. because you've heard a lot of these things, out of my mouth before. Number one, do you ever watch the X-Files? Are you too young for the X-Files?
I remember X-Files and have watched a couple episodes, but never got into it. I was at the age where I was doing other things.
No, I don't blame you. Okay. So the wife and I would partake in whatever and watch X-Files when we were like in our 20s. So, we had a good, but anyway, the smoking man and all these like people that ran the government, but nobody knows who they are. Like if you ask them deep down in the bowels of the NFL, they would say the biggest problem we have right now is the D-line so much better than the O-line. And we're doing everything we can to make it fair, but that's the root of all problems in Williamson's mind. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. That's a whole podcast in itself. The other thing, I referenced Sando. Sando wrote an article right before the season started saying these 32 starting quarterbacks for opening day are the youngest in the Super Bowl era. And then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt 4 plays in, and he was the oldest guy. So it's even younger now. So there's the Wentzes and Winstons and Mariotas didn't pan out, and Luck retired, and Wilson and Cousins aren't taking over the mantle for Rivers and Ben and Brady. And, the in the prime old guys don't exist right now. The equivalent to being on this 14th hole and you're playing well and you're not quite what you used to be, but mentally you're great. Those guys that aren't great right now. They're very, very young, the quarterback position. So therefore they screw a lot of stuff up still. And offenses have to be more simplistic. And defenses now play a ton of too high coverage. And these young whippersnappers won't just dump it down like Brady and death by 1,000 paper cut you. Instead, they try to drive the ball where they shouldn't. And this is especially true in the red zone. Red zone scoring down this year is unusually low. Red zone is a nightmare right now. And I think that's the reason why. And making things worse with the quarterbacks, now people are starting to get hurt. Now we're getting into the Browns' third quarterback. We're getting into the backups. Tyler Bagent is a starter right now. Like, you think scoring's going to go up with him coming in?
Yeah. There was a couple of nice weeks there for the Bears, but they haven't been lighting up the scoreboard anyway. So an undrafted guy coming in at quarterback who was the third, fourth string guy to open
from
camp.
Shepherd.
Yeah, from Shepherd University. Not a powerhouse. There's a couple of guys from Shepherd now bouncing around.
So. Yeah.
But it's amazing too, because you think about, 2 years ago, the oldest quarterback in the league still playing well, 45 years old. You had other guys that were approaching 40, upper 30s. Rodgers, the only one left of that crew. He's not playing right now. Who's the old head in the league right now? Patrick Mahomes? He's like 20, or he's not even 30 yet, is he? How old is Patrick Mahomes?
Stafford's really the one I can come up with. Wilson would have been, but he fell off a cliff. Cousins is good, but he's not at the Rivers, Matt Ryan level in their prime, or Ben, or
not even 35 yet, is he?
Right. But like, who's 30 to 35?
Like,
there's a gap there.
Yeah, exactly. So then you're like at David Carr or Derek Carr,
and he's not good enough to put in that conversation. Right? Tannehill's not. They're fine, but who's the 29 to 35-year-old that is still a really good player?
And there's some really good coordinators on defense that are doing a really good job of figuring out how to stop the league's best offenses. And we saw that in Cleveland. And I think I would put right now the Cleveland Browns number one. Who are your top 5 defenses in the league? They're number one right now, I think, in DVOA, and they're number one in points allowed, with allowing only 77 points through 6 or 5 games. They're one game short. So points per game, I think the 49ers are actually still ahead of the Browns. Niners are 1 in points allowed per game. Browns are 2.
So here's what I kind of jotted down, like on the cocktail napkin kind of conversation, is I think the Browns are 1. Draw a little line under them. I think the Niners are 2. Draw a big, thick line under them. And I don't know who 3 is. I mean, 3 defenses I thought would be really good: New England, Philly, and to a lesser degree, the Jets. I don't think can qualify, and some of them are not their fault. They're always on the field, like New England and the Jets, and some injuries. I think the Saints might be 3, but the other ones in competition for me are Dallas, Detroit. Give them kudos. Baltimore, their numbers are better than the eye test to me, though. Kansas City, Buffalo, but I don't know who number 3 is.
I want to go to Tim's question because he has another team in here, and it's because he's a Seattle Seahawks fan. But he says, "Can you each speak?" Which is why we're doing this part. Can you speak to the top 5 defenses in the league right now at this moment? Thought comes with Seattle finally having its defense healthy, being stout the last few weeks despite recent offensive letdown leading to Cincinnati loss. Want to know who else is playing well in your minds? What about the Seahawks being in that conversation, Matt?
I think they're sort of like the Lions in that I would say drastically improved, really trending the right direction. Some offseason assets are paying off, and some younger guys have bright futures. But I would not consider Seattle in the top 5 conversation yet.
I would
but
put
still improvement.
I would. This is my order: Browns 1, 49ers 2, Jets 3, Cowboys 4, Saints 5.
I like it. I maybe was a little harder on the Jets than I should have been just now. And if you really just factor in what they have to do and what they did this past week, I mean, there are some rough times from where the offense puts them, and that's not their fault. I'm cool with that. They're probably the top 5.
And as you mentioned, a whole bunch of teams. I mean, the Chiefs in 6 weeks have the third lowest points allowed in the entire NFL right now, and the second lowest for teams that have played 6 games.
And Baltimore's second in EPA defensively, even over San Fran. Just looking to pull that up right now. They haven't played a great group of teams, but Baltimore's team's been much better than I thought.
There you go. There's the top 5 defenses in the NFL, according to Peacock and Williamson, as of week 7. And of course, we are going to make our picks for all the week 7 games starting on Thursday's pod, and then Friday coming back and doing it all again. Our 6-pack tomorrow, plus previewing Thursday night Jags and Saints. Talk to you then right here, Peacock and Williamson.